Line up the chain on the bottom of the sprocket, try to feed as much of it on as you can. Put the slack on the bottom, rotate the pedals backwards, and that'll rotate the chain up. Give it a little guide with the screwdriver once in a while here. Try not to pry too hard against it because you don't want it to crack. That stupid plastic that I hate from China that we don't have replacements of. I have not found an easier way to do this yet, but when I do, I'll update the video. See, even I have a tough day. Oh, stupid chain. Tuck up underneath the cover where you belong. There we go. Rotate. Come on. There. Got it on. Now realign the stupid plastic cover with the stupid Chinese screws. Put it back together, and that's basically how you can get the chain back on. I do not like that cover. I could have done better things with CAD CAM and 3D printing and made a better hole for that, but no, they decided to do it the hard way. So you have your chain guard. Put the appropriate screw in the appropriate hole. There's the screw for that. You don't have to use a power screwdriver, but I find it easier once you get it started. Lamp a screw about the same position it was before, put it in. This is the funky one with the filleted head as opposed to a cheese head. This is the cheese head one that goes on the bottom. What I call pan head, cheese head. And it goes down the bottom down here. Hopefully you can see that. The screw hole lines up. Make sure that the sprocket is not dragging on the cover. You might want to pull it out with your fingertip a little bit as you tighten the last screw. Does it rotate around without dragging? Without the seat junk in the way, of course. Yeah. Okay. Now you can focus on putting the chain tensioner back to the proper tension it was originally done. Remember, it was about 3 rotations. Just take your deep socket, 10mm. 1, 2, 3. See how the chain was coming up as I tighten it? And if you do just a little bit more, you can check for flex. If the bike's on a swing arm, this one's not, it's a hardtail. You want a little bit of flex in there, but not enough to really make it a drag on the bike. And if it is on a swing arm, you gotta account for that. So you gotta put some slack in there, about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, just enough it doesn't come off the sprocket. And of course, as you tighten the right hand side, it wants to tighten the chain even more, so you can just push down with your thumb. 1, 2, 3. So now the wheel should approximately spin. Check to make sure the brake hardware is loose. Good. Just dragging on the fender. Does the wheel spin? True. Does it line up with the center axis of the bike? This is where you gotta look down with your right eye and yeah, the motor hub lines up straight, the sprockets, and there's no bearing noise, and the chain's not rattling. It's not dragging on the cover, so we must got it straight. Well, we'll find out and do some more final adjustments. So now that we got that straightened out, quite literally, 3 different axes, now we can start taking care of the other fasteners that go back on there. Now, first let's do the torque arm. This is the most important. If you don't line up the torque arm, you're gonna regret it, because the wheel will want to rotate inside the frame. You put one lock nut, this side facing inward on the casting on the inside of the torque arm. Put the bolt in, and what do you know? The bolt head line's right up on the scratch marks on the frame, so I know I've got it close to straight, because that's where it was when I first put it in. Just hold the nut in there, get it finger tight. It's 10 millimeter, so we use our deep socket. Put the lock nut on there. It's a 6 millimeter threaded nut with a 10 millimeter head. Put a lock nut on there. If it doesn't have one, I suggest putting one on there. And then just give it a snug with a wrench. That way that nut can never ever back out. Sure, something catastrophic. I suggest a 6-point wrench instead of a 12, because it tends to want to skip. Hey, we got this funky motor wire and stuff in the way. Well, before we put the rest of the bracketry and hardware, let's do the reverse of what we just did. Oh, there's our zip tie. Okay. What we're going to do is take a zip tie or string or whatever, tie it onto your wire. You want to put your axle nut on, just finger tight, a couple turns just to get it out of the way. There might be some burrs there, you want to watch out for that. You don't want to cross thread it on there. I'm just going to park those there temporarily while I get the wire threaded back through. So take a fastener, put a zip tie around it, tie a piece of string, what have you. I use an old piece of leftover Romex. That works pretty good too. I like the zip ties because I got a positive 25-pound lock. So first we're going to pull back through. Since the connector for this tail light got pulled through, we'll snake that around. You want to make sure it doesn't get pinched between these two bars. That's why they had a zip tie there in the first place, to make sure that it doesn't get smushed there. You don't want to lose your brake lights. Take your motor wire, uncoil it, pull your zip tie through, and you'll see it rides on top of it went underneath the main harness down there. So just be gentle with it, don't jerk on it too hard. And it will eventually come through and up. A little bit of vibration. I think we'll cover that up with some electrical tape before I get too carried along. I've never seen a debris like that before. That's new. And I caught it before it got out of hand and severed the Hall effect wires, the main power wires to the motor. So obviously they should put a piece of heat shrink on there. But normally that wire would go up there next to the frame where the plastic is. It shouldn't be jarring against there. Let's see, that braid point was right there at the top of the frame. There's the wire for the... I usually tie that there with a zip tie. I don't want these brackets and banging on that wire there. So I'm going to use this little miniature zip tie here. Tack it down. It's about process of continuous improvement, Kaizen. Of course, I was asked, what does that really mean? And I was like, well, either you do it or you don't. If you aren't doing it, then you're going to learn the hard way. Unfortunately, engineers don't put things together right. They don't actually go out and get their hands dirty and service things in the field, so that's why you come up with this stuff over a period of time. I'm so frugal, even recycle zip ties. Anyway, feed the zip tie down through in front of the torque arm. If it's going to be stubborn today, isn't it? Okay, I'll do it from the bottom up then. Of course, trim them off when you're done. I don't need the brake cable in there. Brake cable where it belongs. You want some slack on these nuts, on this wire, so that it flexes and moves freely, but not sticking out so far that you'll snag it on a fire hydrant or something you're passing by, because the pedal may not protect it. And like I said, I just guide this wire so that this bracket and this bracket, when they're held up on that bolt right there, that that wire does not come near it, and there'll be enough play and space there. So I just tighten this down moderately tight. I'm going to trim off the excess. Alright, another zip tie here. Snip, pull through, got a complete zip tie. That's where the abrasion part was. It was on the where the zip tie was. Interesting. Let's put them up against the frame rail. It looks like the plastic was rubbing against it, so I'm going to put the motor wire up on top of the frame rail, so it's free from the fender of the plastic rubbing up against it. That must have been something the Chinese did on a Friday. And of course, as you go along, you can use an extra couple zip ties if you want. I find it's very easy to do. It's a cheap, simple solution. They don't call them aircraft ties for nothing. They wanted to keep things from shaking around inside aircraft for a reason. Anyway, time to put the silly fenders back in the fold down bracketry stuff. So nut goes through the backside of that rail. So we need to put that rail back on, whatever you want to call it. Remember those rode in the front? That goes around there. So obviously you need to get these nuts out of the way. And we're not ready to tighten the whole shebang down. I could have done the right side fasteners too, then doing the right side rail in exact reverse, but I just don't see a purpose in it. Anyway, there's the bolt, there's the nut, there's the rail, and this is going to be a pain in the butt until you get at least one side done. I can't recommend a good way of going about it, but first you get it on the axle. Take these two pieces, lift them up, scissor them to the right, like thus. Put the rail on. Make sure you still can get your nuts out. Okay. Then lift your back end of your frame back up. Scissor them back over to the left. That one went on first. What the? Get on there. It's like putting a bad set of bed springs together. You're not fighting the springs here, it's just the tension of these. I'm thinking about when next time I'm going to take a hex wrench and take those apart. Maybe it'll make it a little easier next time. Maybe it won't. Alright, get your other fastener. Got the bolt, barely got it in there. What I found was easier. Put this bolt in, lift the back end of the bike up. And get this bolt in on this frame piece, and that'll release some tension on that side, so you can get that with the bolt through. Just put it on for a couple turns. That's why you don't want that wire down there, because you don't want that bolt coming up against that rear taillight wire and that frame right there. That's why I moved the zip tie so that it's out of the way of the whole nonsense. You don't have to fight it every single step of the way. There, now I can get the nut on.